Hi everybody, we've got a couple of starters to do and then we'll get on with our main work today. So first of all we've got to multiply out and simplify, then we've got a right angled triangle to deal with. If you can hear that squeaking, that's the guinea pigs. So I'm just going to go shut the door. I'm not sure what they're squeaking at, maybe fighting over a bit of food. Anyway, so we're first of all going to multiply out and simplify a squared bracket. Now remember that if a bracket is squared, or if anything's squared, it means it's multiplying by itself. So I'm going to draw lines on this to multiply it out. So remember our first two lines come from the first term in the first bracket. So I've got x times x is x squared. Then x times negative 3 is minus 3x. Then negative 3 times x gives us another minus 3x. And then we've got negative 3 times negative 3 gives us positive 9. And then if we simplify, we've got x squared, and then we've got minus 3x, minus another 3x gives us minus 6x, and then we've got our plus 9 on the end. Okay, so that's it simplified as far as it'll go. Next question, find the length of side x. Remember when you've got a right angled triangle, the side that doesn't touch the right angle is the longest side in the triangle, and it's called the hypotenuse. Okay, and if we're only dealing with the sides of the triangle, nothing to do with the angles, then we're going to be using Pythagoras' theorem. And Pythagoras' theorem tells us that the long side squared, the hypotenuse squared, is equal to the other two sides squared and added together. Okay, you can write down a squared equals b squared plus c squared, or c squared equals a squared plus b squared. It doesn't matter which formula you write down. Okay, it doesn't matter where the a, b and c go, as long as when you put your values in, you end up with the right way round. Oops. So x squared, so the hypotenuse squared, equals the other two sides squared and added together. And it has to be in that order. You square them and then add, you don't add and then square, that doesn't work. Okay, so we can just work out 18 squared plus 13 squared on a calculator. That gives us 493. So that's x squared, don't forget. So we need to square root that. So x is the square root of 493, and when we work that out on the calculator, we get 22.2036 and lots more decimal places. Okay, so we're going to round that to three significant figures. So that'll give us 1, 2, 3. So that gives us 22.2, and we need to remember our units. It's a length and the units are in centimetres. Okay, right, so moving on. This is what we've been doing, and yesterday we looked at factorising using 2 steps. We're going to do the same thing today for a bit more practice. Okay, so we've got a reminder here that if the question says fully alongside factorize, that gives you a clue that there are 2 steps to it. So here, where the question says fully factorize, remember it could say factorize fully, doesn't matter which way round these 2 words are, but what that gives you a hint at is that there's going to be 2 steps to it. Okay, the first step will be common factor, and the second step will be either difference of 2 squares or a trinomial to factorize into 2 brackets. Okay, so let's do this then. So let's look for a common factor first of all then. If we look at the numbers, we've got 2, 4 and 30. So the common factor of 2 and 4 and 30 is 2. So we take that out of the bracket, and we bear in mind that when we're multiplying out the bracket, this times this would have to give us 2x squared, which means that must be x squared. Then this times this has to give us this. Okay, so 2 times 2x will give us the 4x, and then 2 times this will give us minus 30, which means that that needs to be minus 15. Okay, so we've done the first bit of our full factorising, and that is a common factor of 2. Now if we have a look in the brackets, we have a thing, is that a difference of 2 squares or is it a trinomial? Well, it's not a difference of 2 squares anyway, we can see that immediately, because a difference of 2 squares means we need 2 terms, but we've got 3, so 3 trinomial. So we leave the 2 as it is, and we're going to put this trinomial into 2 brackets. Okay, so this is going to go into these 2 brackets. Okay, we've already got the 2. Okay, right, so let's get on with that then. So remember, what we do is we look at what's going in the start of the brackets, and it's this that tells us. So we need x's. Then we write down the factors of the third term. So that'll be 1 and 15. Remember, we write them in pairs, and 3 and 5. And then we have a look and we think about the signs in the brackets now. So this minus at the end here tells us that the signs in the brackets are going to be different. So we need a plus and a minus. And we want to make a combination. When we look at this and this, we need to make a combination of positive 2x. So if we think about it, if we put 1 and 15 in these brackets with different signs, there's no way we can make 2 out of that. Okay, all we'd be able to make would be either 14x or negative 14x. So it's clearly not that pair. So, excuse me, it must be the 3 and the 5. So remember, we want to get a combination of positive 2x. So because we want a combination of positive, then the bigger number has to go with the plus. So we put the 5 in here and the 3 in here, and then we just check our multiplication. So 5 times x is 5x. X times negative 3 is negative 3x. So we get 5x, take away 3x, does give us the plus 2x, so that's the correct factorising. Okay, so the whole answer has to include the 2 at the front. Without the 2 at the front, that's not the correct answer. Okay, so moving on to the next one. 3m squared, take away 48. And remember, these are all factorise fully questions, or fully factorise, so that means we need a common factor first. So a common factor, if we look at these 2 numbers, it's going to be 3. So 3 times m squared would give us 3m squared, and 3 times negative 16 gives us negative 48. So looking in the bracket now, m squared minus 16, we've done the common factor bit of the factorising, and we can see that this is a difference of 2 squares. So we go on and leave the 3 as it is, and we put our 2 brackets for a difference of 2 squares. And remember that this is m squared and this is 4 squared. So in our brackets, we put m's at the beginning, 4's at the end, and remember it's 1 plus and 1 minus. Okay, and that's it, fully factorised. So the next one, moving on, we can see that we've got a common factor here. I'll give you a moment, have a look at that. So we've got a common factor of 5. And when we factorise using a common factor, we'll have a squared minus 7a plus 10. And we can see now in the bracket we've got a trinomial. So we leave the 5 as it is, and we concentrate on the trinomial and putting it into 2 brackets. So the first thing we do is write down what goes in the beginning of the brackets. So that has to make a squared. So we'll put in a's at the beginning. Then the next job is to write down the factors in pairs of the third term. which gives us 1 and 10 and 2 and 5. Okay, we then look at the signs. So we look at the sign of the third term. That's a plus, which means that the signs in the brackets are both going to be the same, and they're both going to be the same as that one. So it's both minuses. And then we just have a look at our pairs of factors. Which one of these pairs is going to give us 7? So it's got to be this pair. You can't make 7 out of 1 and 10. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way round they go because they're both the same sign. But let's quickly do our multiplying to check. So we get negative 2a there, negative 5a there. So altogether, that gives us the negative 7a that we were looking for. So we know that that's factorised correctly. Okay, then the next one. Again, common factor, and then see what we've got in the bracket. So a common factor here, we can see all these numbers have got zeros on the end. So the common factor is 10. So we're going to have y squared minus 9y plus 18 this time. So we've got our 10. We've got a trinomial in the bracket. So we need 2 brackets. We look at what goes in the front of those brackets, and that's going to have to be y's. We write down the factors of the third term in pairs. So 1 and 18, 2 and 9, 3 and 6. Okay, now we look at the sign of the third term. That's plus, which tells us that the signs in the brackets are going to be the same as each other. And they're both going to be the same as the sign of the middle term, which makes them both minuses again. Okay, so then we just need to work out which pair of factors is going to slot in here and give us 9y when we multiply it out. Okay, we can't make 9 out of that. We can't make 9 out of that, but we can make 9 out of that, so it must be this pair. And because the signs in the brackets are the same, it doesn't matter which way round they go. So we'll just do a quick check. We get negative 3y from that, negative 6y from that, and negative 3y and negative 6y combine to give us negative 9y, and that's what we were looking for, so we know we've factorised that correctly. Oops, went a bit too far with that. Okay, and then the last one, let's have a look here. A bit more tricky to spot the common factor this time, perhaps. Have a look at those numbers, 28 and 63. Which times table will you find both of those in? Well, that's the 7 times table. So 7 is the common factor. And we're going to have 4c squared minus, now 7 9s are 63. So it's minus 9d squared. So now we have a look at what we've got in the bracket, and we can see that this is a difference of 2 squares, that this is 2c squared, and that's 3d squared. So our 2 brackets are going to have 2c in the front of both, and 3d in the back of both, and you need 1 plus and 1 minus. So that's that one fully factorised. Okay, I just want to show you now, before we finish, that you can always check your work, and we're going to do that with this last one here. So we're going to start with this, and we're going to multiply it all out and check that we end up with that. Okay, so we're starting with 7 bracket 2c plus 3d times 2c minus 3d. So what to do is we're going to multiply out the brackets, leave the 7 on the outside just now, and then we'll multiply through by 7 when we've finished. Okay, so what we're going to do then is, I'll just draw lines again. So 2c times 2c is 4c squared. 2c times negative 3d gives us negative 6CD. Then 3D times 2C gives us positive 6CD. And then 3D times negative 3D gives us minus 9D squared. Okay, then we can see that we've got a minus 6D and a plus 6D. So they cancel each other out, leaving us just with our 7 on the outside, and then 4C squared minus 9D squared on the inside. And then if we carry on our multiplying out, 7 times 4C squared is 28C squared, and 7 times negative 9D squared is negative 63D squared, which is what we started off with here. So we know we've checked that that was the correct factorising. Okay, so if you've got time in an assessment, you can always multiply out to check your factorising. Anyway, well done with that. We're going to go on to completing the square tomorrow. So have a go at the practice questions for these, please. And remember that your assignment is due in by the end of today. So if you've not done that already, can you do that for me, please? And submit that either on Teams, or you can email me your answers, or send them as a direct message if you're using the Facebook page. Okay, see you later.